Now let's talk a little bit about working cash fund, how it's used, and how you might use bond proceeds put into the working cash fund to help your situation going forward. The working cash fund is really meant to be an internal bank to provide cash flow between the biggest time you receive revenues, which is tax revenues from the county clerk. So they only come twice a year, in March and in September or December. Bad news from Cook County is that the news, it looks like taxes will not be distributed for the second installment of the 2009 levy until at the earliest January 1, at the latest February 1. Unheard of. But given the economy, we're having an unprecedented number of tax objections, and Cook County is just unable to process them all on a timely basis. So the Treasurer's website right now in Cook County says possibly January 1. That poses a big problem for Cook County School District. Number one, most of Cook County School District bond payments are due December 1, including the districts. It's not unusual when you expect to get money in September, plenty of time to make December 1 bond payment. Well, not with these huge delays. So increasing the working cash fund increases your fund balance and your liquidity so that instead of doing short-term borrowing from a local bank, paying interest to the local bank, you can borrow from your working cash fund. Okay? When you're not borrowing that money, the money sits in the working cash fund and earns interest. Now, you have as a board the ability to take that working cash fund money and abate it to the operating funds and spend it. I would recommend against that. And districts who have issued bonds for liquidity have in fact passed resolutions regarding that money that they will not abate it permanently from that working cash fund and just spend it as deficit pressures mount. Clearly, we're in a really difficult time. The state is not paying its bills. We're looking at decreased funds from state aid, which is pressurizing budgets. So, I think I just caution you, if you issue working cash bonds, I would recommend considering a resolution to maintain the working cash bond for operations in the fund and only borrow it when needed in between the tax distributions. Then it's there for you next time you borrow it. Just along those lines, in order to avoid short-term borrowing, school districts need not only working cash, but just general operating fund balances. And the recommendation we're hearing from rating agencies, especially in this difficult economy, is 30 to 50% fund balances as a percentage of expenditures. To the extent you can't maintain that or don't have that in your general fund, the working cash fund can help give you more liquidity. And just to talk about borrowing from yourself versus borrowing from a bank, a lot of districts right now, especially in collar counties, May is coming up as their low cash time. For Cook County districts, it's more October, November. And we're seeing tons of short-term borrowing, and there's cost of issuance every time you do that. So it ends up being kind of an expensive proposition in that expense goes right against your operating fund balances. If you do a working cash bond, the debt service and interest costs is paid out of the bond and interest fund. So it's actually new money to the district. Okay, for the following options, and we're just trying to give you some options here, we've assumed a $10 million bond issue for working cash fund purposes to increase the operating fund balances. Thank you. The next page is just your outstanding debt. And you really don't have any bonds outstanding approved by referendum. It's all non-referendum bonds. You have the Series 2000, Series 2001, and Series 2006 bond issues. The final maturity is 2022 for the 2006 issue. Okay? And let me just point you to the third column from the left, the debt service extension base. There it is, the $4,898,660. That's increased by 0.1% under this new law. In 2010, it's increased by 2.7% and 1.5% thereafter. So you see that base grows. And then if we subtract your outstanding debt, just want to bring your attention to the remaining debt service capacity capacity on the far right of the page shows your ability to pay off more non-referendum debt service. The other column that I think is important is the tax rate for debt service. You see that's the same or goes down over time depending on what the EAV is. We've got a typical kind of triennial reassessment cycle picture here for you, which makes the rate go down. But the bottom line is the payments that you're making on the debt do not increase